Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Thursday, September 11th, 2025, which makes this the news and events for Wednesday, the 10th of September, 2025, day 1295 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv, coming to you from this major European capital currently under siege. And as Raven correctly points out, Article 4 has been invoked. Article 4 of the NATO Convention is a call for consultation. There has been some event, and a NATO partner has been affected, and they want to coordinate their response with their fellow NATO members. And so Poland has called for Article 4 consultations with the rest of NATO. And we will see from there where it goes. Chef Deb the Crone sent me some interesting news that Charlie Kirk appears to have been assassinated at a student event in Utah. I'm going to be very curious to see who shot him. The left is not famous for these kinds of political assassinations. These tend to come from the right. And so as a person who, let's face it, has stoked violence in the world, it appears that he has been a victim of that violence. Liam, good evening. How do you do? Hey, Nightshade. Hey, everybody. Big thanks to Nightshade. I was here last night trying to download the live so I could get it posted. And Nightshade was the first person to alert me to the incursion, the provocation of Russian drones into Poland. If you don't follow Nightshade, give Nightshade a follow. He's got great daily updates on everything happening in Ukraine. Hey, Morna. Norbert Hackoff, how you doing? Little Red, there's my buddy Little Red. Hey, Joe, what do you know? TKS Daddy, Akron, how you doing? It's been a busy 24 hours. We're going to talk about it here. Hey, Mike now. Hey, Eli. Eli makes me smile. Hey, Scully. Scully makes me smile, too. Daryl Roberts, how do you do? Dan Ballard, good evening. Hey, Jackie. Kiwi Annie. Oh, the gang is all here. Hey, Nicola Jones. T-Bar Guy, long time no see. Hey, Integral. Hey, Sarah. Heart 6, Scotty. How's everybody doing tonight? So, quite a 24 hours, huh? Now, look, let's be very clear about a couple of things. This was not an accident. This was not stray drones. This was a carefully planned and executed provocation against a NATO member in order to test both NATO's resolve and responsiveness. Think about how much information the Russians got from this attack on Poland last night. And I am going to call it an attack because it was clearly an attack. Ask that guy whose house has no roof today if it wasn't an attack. Of course it was. Give me a break. Now, here's the thing. We're all upset that this is not going to trigger Article 5, right? We all want to see some justice in this fight. And justice for Ukraine would mean to stop letting them be the shield of Europe and be the only ones bleeding in the cause of democracy and liberty. And maybe some other people could lend a hand. But that's not going to happen. Cooler heads are going to prevail. So we have to live in reality, Anthony. As difficult as that is, right? Inventor asks a great question. Why would Putin do this? He is risking unifying Europe further. It's idiocy. The only problem, inventor, is that Putin thinks he's winning. He did it because he thinks he's winning. And he believes that Europe and the United States are weak, that we are not going to do shit. And so he keeps pushing and pushing. Think about what he has done in the last 10 years. Ammunition warehouses in Czechoslovakia destroyed. Malls in Poland burned. Assassinations in Germany and the UK on foreign soil. He's still in charge. He's still the leader of the unfree world as far as he's concerned. And this provocation, he's right. Nothing's going to happen, or very little is going to happen. The best that we can hope for out of this is that Europe gets its act together enough to put some kind of a no-fly zone over Western Ukraine. If we could just get some kind of just a couple hundred kilometers into Ukraine, even that. Now, Paul, here's the thing, right? Paul says, Peter, if they can't take Kyiv, forget about taking Kyiv, Paul. They can't even take Pokrovsk, right? The lines are being shattered. That whole northern thrust around Pokrovsk, right now those lines are being shattered by the Ukrainian military. They can't even take Pokrovsk, let alone Kyiv or all of Ukraine. So, no, they do not have the resources to take on the West. They do not have them. However, it is very important to remind us all that they have been telling their people for 3 years now, we fight all NATO. 42 countries, whole world against Russia. This is what they're telling their people. Their people believe that NATO pilots are being shot down over Kursk. Their people believe that NATO ground forces are being captured in Sumy. Their people believe this bullshit about how they're fighting the whole world. So, to have this news story that they can twist however they want inside of Russia, that 19 Russian drones went into Polish airspace, NATO airspace, is just in line with their narrative that they're fighting all of NATO. So internally, there will be no backlash from this in any way. On the contrary, it's a PR win for him in his own press. He can twist it any way he wants, if he's even going to tell the people about it. One of the principal lessons from last night, well, there are two. There are two principal lessons from last night. One is that he's going to get away with it. Two, for him, he has learned a great deal about how NATO would respond. Now, what does that mean? Well, what we saw last night were Polish F-16s in the sky, Dutch F-35s in the sky, Italian AWACS in the sky, a refueling plane from Estonia that refueled the jets during their 9-hour combat mission over Poland. We saw, which, by the way, if I understand it correctly, 14 of the 19 drones that they claim entered Polish airspace were shot down. That's a 74% interception rate. That's pretty good shooting. However, if you look at the drone telemetry, at least 5 of the drones that entered Polish airspace returned to attack targets inside Ukraine. They U-turned it. They went into Poland and then U-turned it back in order to hit targets around Lviv from the west, which is the only way to do it, from Polish airspace. And that's a good approach for the Russians because the western side of Lviv is not as well protected as the eastern side because the drones shouldn't be coming from that direction, right? So at least 5. Now look, if the 5 drones that returned to Ukraine but did incur or violate Polish airspace, if those 5 drones are counted in the 19 that the Polish say, well, then that means that the Poles and NATO shot down 100% of the drones that went in, right? 100% interception rate. The response time was good. The effectiveness of the force, possibly 100% effective. Likely it was. The criticism that's currently being lobbed against the response is, well, we don't know if it hit the house or if falling debris hit the house. That's the thing. We just don't know the answer to that question. So it could be, you could be right, that they only, that they shot down 14 and there was another one, a 15th, that hit the house. That is a possibility. The house has no roof. There's a lot of damage, but there was no fire. And so that makes me think that it was probably debris. Okay, so anyway, here's the thing about this, right? And I just saw something somebody said. Here, Raven says, wanted the data of the Patriots and the response. And Raven, I think you're right, but here's the problem. You don't use a $1 million Patriot missile to shoot down a drone. You certainly don't use a $1 million AIM missile to shoot down a drone, right? And the problem in the response last night was that that's what they were using. To shoot down these drones, Poland and NATO had to pull out some very expensive equipment. Shooting down drones here in Ukraine, they do it for pennies on the dollar, using old Maxim guns from World War, the interstitial period between World War I and World War II, that they can fire for pennies on the dollar, pennies on the shot. So you'll notice that no Patriots, no ground forces, no anti-aircraft missiles, surface-to-air missiles were used in the elimination of those drones. Part of this attempt could have been to suss out the location of those air defenses. If that was part of the plan, that completely failed because the Poles and NATO did not use any ground-based air defenses to eliminate this drone threat from the skies. And how do I know? Why do I say that I know it was the Russians and they did it on purpose? I am not an expert, but I spent the morning listening to experts analyze the telemetry of those drones. And there is absolute consensus across experts that drones who have been affected by electronic warfare or who go astray take a path that is tangential to their original course, and then they just kind of go off into the horizon. They do not continue to maneuver. And these drones continued to maneuver well into NATO airspace, as far into NATO airspace as 300 kilometers, 200 miles, forcing the closure of 4 major airports in Poland, including Chopin at Warsaw. Now look, if I'm right, or if all the experts that I listen to are right. And these drones were programmed not merely to fly to Poland, but to then maneuver their way around Poland. And 19 entered Polish airspace. How many did Russia have to program so that they could fly across Ukraine, past Ukrainian air defenses, and get to Poland? Because the Ukrainians were busy last night, very busy. 368 drones shot down or taken out by electronic warfare. 92% interception rate last night. 92%. Well, wait a minute. If the Ukrainians shot down 92% of the drones in Ukraine and 19 made it to Poland, well, that's 8%, right? That's 8%. That means that nearly 200 drones would have had to have been programmed to go to Poland, right? Because the Russians, the Ukrainians don't know where they're going. They're just shooting down everything they can. So for the 19 to get through, there had to be another 180 that were programmed to go to Poland, and the Ukrainians shot them down. So for the first time in this war, Ukraine is physically protecting the Polish people, because as many as 200 drones could have easily swarmed into their place last night, into their country their airspace last night. Why isn't this classed as an attack on NATO? That's a great question. And let's try to unpack that. As I understand it, many of these drones, maybe all of them, did not have warheads. They didn't have warheads, right? So right off the bat, there's the question of, is it really an attack then? It wasn't really an attack, Martin. It wasn't and see, well, the Belarusian question is a separate question. Let's deal with that next. But because it's a good point to make. Look, I see y'all talking there in the thing about Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was a piece of shit. Charlie Kirk was a traitor to the United States of America. Charlie Kirk was a force for evil in the world. Let's not shed any tears over the elimination of this piece of shit from our lives. These people are getting what they deserve. Good riddance. Yes, I am a base toast. I am extremely base. Actually, I'm all about that base. No acid. Actually, I like acid too. Anyway, I used to anyway. So forget about Charlie Kirk. He's a piece of shit. He ended up like all the other piece of shit maggots who have been taking Russian money and stabbing America in the kidney. No, fuck him. Fuck him in the ear. And hope his kids grow up with a sense of what America is supposed to be, instead of the perverse vision that he offered the world. No. Okay. Why is this not an attack? There's still some question as to whether or not the drones were armed. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it wasn't really an attack. It was never intended to be an attack. It was intended to test NATO. And that's what it did. And see, here's the thing. This is where the big difference lies between the bullies of autocracy and the level-headed representatives of democracy. Might does not make right. The fact that we have all the toys to march into Moscow in 6 weeks from Ukraine. If that's how we wanted to settle things, we could do it. The thing is, that is not how democracies work. That is not how a democratic institution like NATO works. NATO, what's the first thing that happens? Article 5. What is Article 5? Discussion. NATO leaders come together. I don't disagree with you, Little Red. I'm just trying to explain what's really happening in the world right now. NATO leaders get together. They say, what happened? Not much happened. Did I say 5? Sorry. Article 4 happens, right? Conversation, discussion. All sides get listened to. Democracy is hard. It's hard. It's not the spoiled child throwing temper tantrums in his palace, tweeting at 2 a.m. from his golden throne about the evils of the world. No. It's intelligent, thoughtful, considered discussion. And the fact is that all of these people in NATO do not want to send, they know that the political will does not exist to send their sons to die in Ukraine. It does not exist. As passionate as any one of us are about this issue, the political will for that does not exist, and we have to face that reality. So, there are lots of other things that they can do should they choose to do them. So, no one in NATO wants World War III. Of course they don't. It's by definition, it's a defensive alliance. Now let's look at this defensive alliance. Was it really an attack? The Poles are refusing to use that word. Prime Minister Tusk of Poland has said that this was a provocation, right? Like the bully poking you from behind during math class, right? Just flicking your ear, flicking your ear, flicking your ear. It's annoying. It's a pain in the ass. It's like a gnat buzzing. But it doesn't really hurt. It doesn't hurt you. Why mess up your good Sunday outfit for this nonsense from this child? And that's what we're dealing with when we're dealing with Vladimir Putin. We're dealing with a homicidal child, a thin-skinned little baby who must quash all dissent. Again, there is no attack yet. Now, that may change. I don't think the timing of this is an accident. There are lots of things that have happened recently that would drive Putin to do this. Chief among them is the EU just approved 45 billion euros for air defense in Poland to strengthen the Polish border against Russia and Belarus. Air defense assets to create a drone wall between Europe and the Union State. It is the anniversary eve of 9/11. I don't think that date is an accident. Vladimir Putin loves his special dates. He's got a mysticism with numerology and dates. Vladimir Putin loves his dates. Today, well, for me, it's already past midnight. So for me, it's already 9/11. I was in Manhattan on 9/11. I was in World Trade Center 2 about 20 minutes before the first plane hit. My E-train uptown was probably one of the last E-trains out of World Trade Center for the next 10 years. I left World Trade Center like I did every morning. I got out of the train at 42nd Street and 6th Avenue, and I turned around because everybody was looking downtown, and there I could see World Trade 2 on fire. I could see the black smoke gushing out of the building. Oh, hey, everybody, there's Ben Tilley. Ben is the sponsor of tonight's live. Thanks, Ben. Everybody say thanks to Ben. Thank you, Ben. I was in Manhattan that day. Fortunately, I was not at the Broad Street office. We had two offices then, one at 40 Broad Street right next to the stock market, and then one uptown in the Grace Building at 42nd and 6th. And all of the guys from the downtown office, everybody that had been assigned downtown that day, they started coming into the uptown office about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, covered head to toe in that cancerous dust of the crematoria, concrete, and glass that filled the air of Manhattan that day. What I remember most, and what Donald Trump forgets about 9/11, is that it is the only time in history that Article 5 was actually invoked. And it was invoked on behalf of the United States of America. Our allies flocked to us in ways that were moving on many levels. And the coalition was formed to go after the people that did this. Donald Trump says of NATO, "Do you really think if we were attacked, they would come and help us? No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so." Cynically, foolishly, stupidly, spitting in the faces of our allies, our best friends, who did in fact come to our aid at that time in spades. And it is funny to Vladimir Putin to attack a NATO country on the anniversary of 9/11 and the only time that Article 5 was invoked. Now, here's the thing. Ukraine did help after 9/11. You are right, Lars. Thank you. You are absolutely right. Who's Patrick? I don't know who Patrick is. Oh, yeah, please, Mike. You got to be kidding me. Donald Trump doesn't pay his people to do the work that they do for him. You think he's going to pay them for volunteer work? No. My wife and I, we spent 3 days down at Exchange Place loading emergency supplies on ferries for Ground Zero. That's what we did. And running a taxi service. The Pavonia Newport Mall is very near Exchange Place. And the welders showed up from all over the place to go volunteer at Ground Zero. And they would just get on these volunteer transport ships. But the only problem was they had a park over at Pavonia Newport. And I had a Buick. We would shuttle them back and forth, right? So guys coming in could get a ride over, guys going out could get a ride over. That's what we did for the 72 hours after the attack. Once I finally got home, which took a long time. But the important thing here is that was when our allies stood with us the most. And it is a crime and a sin that Donald Trump would spit in their faces and malign them after they stood with us on an Article 5 attack. Tomorrow, the Zapad 2025 exercises kick off in Belarus. Now, guys, look, this is where Belarus enters the picture. Tomorrow, Belarus and Russia, the Union State, are holding exercises that they call Zapad. It is important to recognize that the 2022 Zapad exercises were a cover for the invasion, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. They've used these exercises before to launch operations. Now, the most likely operation, now, could there be an operation launched tomorrow? There could be. Here's why we're worried about it. According to Russia, publicly, 15,000 troops, Russian troops, are joining 45,000 Belarusian troops for these combined exercises. So about 60,000 guys. The problem is that they are, according to all the satellite imagery, intelligence analysts in the West say that all the preparations are not for 60,000 troops, but for 150,000 troops. That's a substantial difference. Now, what are they, if they were to launch a new operation, what would that operation be? Well, likely what it would be another attack on Ukraine from the north, another effort to try to blitzkrieg Kyiv, right? That's the most likely thing. However, there are a lot of analysts who have raised an alarm because these exercises are happening on the Polish-Lithuanian border, that the Russians could attempt to seize the Suwalki Gap. That's like a 60-kilometer, 40-mile stretch along the Polish-Lithuanian border that runs straight to Kaliningrad. And the idea is that maybe the Russians would try to grab a 15-mile wide slice of Poland and Lithuania and connect Belarus to Kaliningrad. Now, I agree with everybody here that Russia can't afford another front. It seems highly unlikely that they are going to attack two NATO states and try to secure a length of land between them. It seems very unlikely. But it's not impossible. This guy thinks he's winning. This guy thinks he's winning. He thinks NATO won't do shit. And the lesson he is learning today is that he's right. See, the thing is, Eli, they think that if they can just get in there, grab it, and put their flag up, that NATO won't do shit. That's the thinking. So, we'll see. Now, the other question around Belarus is this cockamamie bull story from the Belarusians that they chased some of these drones down themselves and shot some of them down, and that they went astray as part of this training exercise. I cannot tell you what bullshit I think that is. Because while I don't know much about warfare, I know a little something about electronics. And one of the things that you do when you're testing drones of any kind is you geofence them. You tell them these are the areas you program them. These are the coordinates within which you can operate. And you can't go any farther than that. So you don't lose your expensive drones. You geofence them. And in the case of the military, you geofence them during training because you don't want something like this to happen. So this cockamamie bull story from the Belarusians, which is intended, I think, clearly to cover the Russian ass, is such nonsense, because what they're really saying is we are so incompetent that the most basic safety procedures were not put in place during our training. That's what they're saying. We are so incompetent The most basic safety procedures were not used in our training. This notion that they hunted them down and they let the Poles know about them and all this stuff, I think is complete bullshit. I think that it's engineered to give Moscow plausible deniability. But of course, these guys think everybody is so dumb that these basic questions around basic security will never get asked or will never reflect badly on the Belarusians. It's a load of shit, in my opinion. Oh yeah, everybody's going to be on high alert now. You can be sure of that. Potato dictator might be a joke, but he's got the Belarusian people in an iron fist, right? He's got 20% of them locked up in labor camps. This is not, they're all incompetent dictators by definition. But let's not forget how brutal they are and how hard they make life for their people. I don't know what's going to happen next. None of us do. Except I feel confident in saying that we're not going to get an Article 5 response out of this. What my fondest wish is that we could get some kind of no-fly zone in the west of the country. If we could just protect Odessa and Lviv, that would be a huge help to the Ukrainian people and the economy. It would mean that we could maybe get domestic flights going again. You know, this trip to Sofia, which I'm very excited about, and I'm very grateful to everybody, including Ben Tilley, who helped make it happen, is taking 2 extra days because I have to go to Warsaw to get a plane to Sofia. And man, that drags, boy. That makes it hard for everybody in this country to get around. Very hard. B-52's heading that way. I don't know what that means, Big D. What are you talking about? What happens if this happens again in Poland? That's a great question, Anthony. Or what happens if tomorrow morning we wake up to news that the Russian army has blitzkrieged the Suwalki Gap and now holds 30 kilometers on either side of the Polish-Lithuanian border, or 15 kilometers on either side of the Polish-Lithuanian border. Do you know people who live there have been getting the fuck out of town? The place is supposed to be empty. Everybody along that stretch is so concerned about this that they have gotten out of there. It's a ghost town right now. There would be no resistance. Any drone activity tonight? Not that I've seen. B-52's headed to Europe. Buff, the B-52 is on the way to Europe, might be there already. Interesting. I'm sure there are, Sarge. I'm just talking about the civilian population. Hi, Peter. Any word if these drones were armed or not? We're getting conflicting reports on that, Jeff. We need an official statement from the Poles. If you saw some of the video of them getting shot out of the air, it sure looked like they were armed, didn't they? Oh, they're headed to the UK for an exercise, the B-52s. Yes, someone I know left the Ukrainian-Polish border many days ago. Okay. Man, I hate going through that border. Okay, so we got about 15 minutes left. Let me again thank Ben Tilley, who is the sponsor of this live. Guys, we have live sponsors for Thursday, Friday, and Monday. If anybody can sponsor a live next week, I would be very grateful. The Sofia trip is coming up. and I need some pocket money and to know that the rent is here for when I get back. Michael Huzig is saying they were not unarmed. The explosions were quite big. Thank you, Michael. Big thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces, and of course, to the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Jay, Travis, Pete, Maddie, and Feisty. Thank you all. So questions, comments, points of observation. Hey, June. I was just looking at your name. You're like the next person in line for a video sponsorship because of your Patreon membership. You'll notice they come out in alphabetical order. And Scully, the thing is, we only talked about one thing that happened today. We didn't talk about how the lines around Pokrov's northern sector are fracturing. We didn't talk about how the whole northern section from Tetkino to Sumy to Volchansk is under intense pressure. The Russian forces there are cracking. And more importantly, Ukraine is establishing clear dominance in the skies, air superiority. They are pounding the Russians with AASM hammers and glide bombs right now. I mean, there's a lot going on. We didn't talk about the Belarusian spy ring that Romania, Hungary, and the Czech Republic snapped in half this week. There's a million things going on. This is not the time to turn away. Hey, Truthful. Well, Michael, I'd like to see them at work. I think the holdup might be that the solid rocket fuel boosters are being produced in Denmark. And I don't think they're here yet. I think that's all we're waiting for. Night, Kiwi Annie. A Tesh burned a communications tower. The attack on civilians in Donetsk, pensioners lined up to cash their pension checks. Boom, hit with a glide bomb, 24 of them unalived right there. War crime. Brutal. Night, Nan. Wasn't another Russian pipeline shut down again by the drone attack last night? Possibly. I'm not aware of a pipeline being hit last night. Yep, we know all about Charlie Kirk being rubbed out. Nobody gives a fuck. Guy got what he deserved. Good riddance. I mean, that's the fate of all these people. That's how they're all going to end up. Man, that's what happens. Ah, you're funny, Joe. I know you spell better than that. Good night, Yanni. Since Russia had a government building in Kyiv, it's time to hit the Kremlin, right? I think so, Roy, but I think cooler heads are going to prevail. I mean, seriously, if Ukraine burned the Kremlin, can you imagine what that would do to the Russian psyche? I don't know. We'll see what happens. Well, I think, Nicola, that it's not going to be like a single meeting. There's going to have to be discussions. And then people are going to have to take a look at resources and what they can legitimately contribute. It could take a couple days. But yes, we will absolutely get some kind of an answer, some kind of a response out of NATO. We'll just keep watching for the NATO press briefings. And I do think for anybody that has any influence with anybody in any kind of political circles, it is time to push for a no-fly zone west of the Dnipro. Yeah, read the room, pal. The topic here is Ukraine. It's not Gaza. It's not the subversion of the U.S. federal government by the Kremlin. It's not the assassination of a piece of shit right-wing retard who got what he deserved. That is not the topic. The Russian people are completely in the dark about everything that is going on. The Russian people do not even know why there are gas shortages in Russia. They don't know that their pipelines and that their refineries are constantly being attacked. They don't know that because the state owns all the media. They only know what the state wants them to know. So they don't know why. I did a piece last night on an investigative reporter from News Channel 24 in Moravia, Central Russian Republic, who did an investigative piece on why there was a gas shortage. And the best he could get was an official statement from an oil and gas executive that told him this is not a global supply problem. And that is the whole end of his investigative journalism. I mean, so it's ridiculous. Internet closures were a subject of an article in yesterday's the internet outages were Moskovsky Komsomolets, where the internet outages were the subject of an article saying that they were common, that they were everything, everywhere. And that they were happening with ongoing frequency. And that led to complaints from the Russian people that their internet was going down. And so the Russian government has agreed that in the future, when it shuts down the internet to protect the people from drone attacks, even though that is not why they are shutting down the internet. Because when military unit 6912, way the fuck out there in the far east of the country, was blown up, there were no drones involved, but they sure as shit shut the internet down because they don't want anybody to know that military unit 6912 just got blown up. Right? They don't want that. They don't want pictures of the smoke and the fire and the bodies on Telegram channels. They don't want it. So they shut the internet down. They tell the people they're shutting it down so that the Ukrainians can't hack it to control their drones. That's what they tell them. They're going to make certain websites available even when the internet is shut down. So they're going to make RuTube, the Russian knockoff of YouTube, available. Certain Russian retail sites like Wildberries will be available. And you'll be able to vote online if it happens to be a voting day. Now, one of the things that will be available when the internet is down is Max Messenger. And if you haven't heard about Max Messenger, It is an application, a messaging application that is forcibly installed on every Russian phone. And Moskovsky Komsomolets yesterday ran an article, 9 Myths About Max Messenger. And my favorite one was, it will not denounce you to the authorities for using a VPN or accessing banned websites. What? You have to tell me that the application you're forcing me to install will not denounce me to the authorities for using a VPN. Well, shit, that sounds like it's going to denounce me to the authorities for using a VPN, which of course it does. This thing compromises all your data and makes it available to the state. You can't have a dick pic on there that they don't know about. Forget it. It's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. They've blocked WhatsApp. Everything. It doesn't matter if it's a burner phone in Russia because every Russian device gets this thing installed. Oh, now that's an interesting point. One of the things that the Russians have done in the past is they've used Ukrainian SIM cards in the drones so that they could ping cell phone towers in Ukraine for triangulation, geospatial triangulation, right? Keep them on course. Do course corrections. It's going to be very interesting to see if these drones that went into Poland were outfitted with Polish SIM cards. It's going to be very interesting to see if other drones that were shot down inside Ukraine yesterday were fitted with Polish SIM cards. Or Lithuanian, maybe. There's some speculation they might have used Lithuanian SIM cards or Polish SIM cards in those drones. That right there would be solid evidence of the Russian conspiracy to attack Poland yesterday. Watch my time. Watch my time. That is a weird thing to say to a guy who works for himself and his followers. Watch my time? Was that a threat? Like, are you threatening me? Like, you don't have much time left, buddy. We're coming for you. Please, get in line. I get death threats 6 times a week. Give me a break. He's not going to be a martyr. The right doesn't do that. He's going to be forgotten in a heartbeat. They're going to throw him under the bus. Nobody's going to remember him a week from now. They will not care. These people do not care. No, he's just the first of many from the violence that they have created themselves. I don't see why they would. What the fuck? It's a weird thing to say. Oh, of course, I don't know how much they've invested in Charlie Kirk. Thanks, Christian. Yeah, I guess the shooter got away in that case. I don't know we don't know anything about him at this time. Ugh, I don't know who you are, but nobody gives a fuck about you and your mood. Thanks, inventor. Christian, the Ukrainians are regularly using unmanned surface drones as drone platforms. So a little Magura V5 or V7 will sail up to the coast of Crimea. Then it will launch its aerial drones. Those drones can even be FPV drones because the Magora will act as a repeating station, like a radio station. And so the drone operators can be hundreds of miles away. And then they hit radar installations, mostly is what they've been hitting. Yes, the Ukrainians are doing a push on the lines. They are about to encircle several thousand Russian troops just north of Pokrovsk and collapse that. If you look at a map of Pokrovsk, it's like semi-encircled by Russian troops. Well, it looks like right now, that whole northern line is about to collapse. So keep your fingers crossed. But I don't think that's the most amazing thing. I better watch my time. I only have 1 minute. Ooh. People say the weirdest things on here. I don't understand people at all. Anyway, I'm going to say something that I really have not said here, or anywhere for that matter. But, Kursk and Pokrovsk have really hollowed out much of the force in Kherson and in Crimea, right? They had to get those replacement troops from somewhere. And where they've been drawing them from is Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Crimea. Well, how long can they keep doing that? How long can they keep pulling troops out of those areas before those areas are so badly undermanned that the Ukrainians can push in, take back Kherson, and cut the land bridge to Crimea? I really think that day is coming. And I do not believe that the Kerch Bridge will come down until Kherson is taken back and the land bridge to Crimea is cut. And I think that's what we should be looking for next. That, or maybe the line up around Crimea is in trouble too. That line could snap. They're having a lot of problems up there. BC Rail Model wants to know what my take on the drones in Poland is. Well, pal, we just spent 45 minutes talking about that. So with all due respect, if you'd like to hear my thoughts on it, I suggest that in about 2 hours, you take a look at my YouTube channel where this discussion will be posted. The practical upshot of yesterday is that Russia learned a great deal. They were reinforced in their opinion that NATO won't do shit. And my fondest wish is that we get a no-fly zone west of the Dnipro out of this, but it's unlikely that we will. Thanks, JR. I did your video yesterday, JR, I think, or the day before. Anyway, so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Peter Alexievich. This has been the Live at 5 from Kyiv, coming to you from this major European capital currently under siege. Big thanks to Ben Tilley, who was the sponsor for tonight's live. We have sponsors through Monday. If anybody wants to sponsor a live next week, your help would be greatly appreciated. It would help me with the Sofia trip, which is coming up. Very quickly now, in just 10 days. Big thanks to everybody who helped with that already. All of my travel is secure. I'm just worried about the October rent and having money on the road. Big thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group, and of course, the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk. Thank you, guys. And thanks. Hey, Arna. I didn't even see you in here tonight. And so thanks to everybody who makes all of this possible. I really appreciate it. And I will see everybody tomorrow. Thanks. Take care.